Okay, I think this is working. This is the first time we've done a YouTube live, so this is an exploration for all of us, but I think it's working. So thank you so much for joining the Open Heart release party. We're calling it a party. We'll do a little bit of teaching. I'll talk. Okay, I think this is working. This is the first time we've done a YouTube live. Oops. So this is an exploration for all of us. I'll hear myself. But I think it's working. So thank you so much for joining the Open Heart release party. We're calling it a party. We'll do a little bit of teaching. I'll talk. Okay, there we go. I love that everything about this entire product launch has forced us to be vulnerable and make mistakes, and pretty much everything about the release of this particular blend has been either a mistake or an oops or figuring something out. It's one of those blends that just like doesn't allow you to be sophisticated. But that's the whole point, right? So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about why this particular blend, why now, what are the flowers that are in this particular blend. I'm going to show you how to make a really super simple and delicious kombucha float, and just share some personal stories, and then we'll roll from there. Okay, so first of all, Open Heart. This has been in the making for several months now, and who would know? I mean, we kind of planned this to release this blend a long time ago, and who would have guessed that so many things would pop up this year. And I think sincerely that now is the absolute perfect time for Open Heart for so many reasons. One, because we've all been through 6 or 7 months of total crazy madness, and two, astrologically, if you follow, looks like we're like slowing down into a Mars retrograde, which usually means that people are fiery and things maybe don't turn out the way we expected them to. And I think that there will be a lot of different conflicts arising this fall. There have been this summer. And so the best way that I can see is to just go right through it, to soften into our hearts. And I have some practices that are really simple that I can offer as well to help us really be able to go through versus, I think as humans, when we run up against things that are really uncomfortable, our tendency, or I can speak for myself, my tendency sometimes is just to avoid it, whether I'm conscious of it or unconscious of it. Hard conversations, or when people are combative, sometimes it's easier just to kind of like move around it and avoid it. Sometimes we do that without even being aware of it. So this specific bouquet of flowers is teaching us how to just like move right through it, and how to do it in a way that's graceful and respectful and soft, and that we can learn from it. So Open Heart. Open Heart is the 3.0 of infinite love, right? So if you think in terms of 3 different levels of flower essence blends that we have at LOTUSWEI, the first level is stabilization. So all of the first 6 blends are for, all the things that we just need for survival: sleep, happiness, love, inspiration, energy, that type of thing. And infinite love is the 1.0 version of this concept, so to speak. Many of you love infinite love. It is something to always come back to. As we released this Open Heart, we decided to throw in an infinite love bath salts in every order because it's a great softener. It helps us be really gentle and kind to ourselves. So when things that are difficult arise, it's something you can always come back to. And then the next series, so the next level of flower essences, the next 6 blends, we call exploration. And that's when the 2.0 version of Infinite Love came out, and that is fierce compassion. Fierce compassion is all those things about love that we really don't want to talk about, right? Abandonment, rejection, do we belong in this world, childhood issues, all those types of things. This kind of like goes deeper. And then we come to the 3.0 version, which is the open heart. And the open heart also has, I'm going to talk a little bit about the scent right now, because if you haven't gotten it in your little hands yet, it's really amazing. It's using bourbon rose, which is a different kind of more fruity rose, and tonka bean, which gives it these really yummy vanilla caramel notes, really tiny bit of lemon, and cardamom absolute. And when you use an absolute, it's always like the most refined version of cardamom. This is a really interesting blend. Oh, and Atlas cedar, one of my favorites. Some people smell cherries. When I use the anointing oil, to me, it just smells like cherry liqueur. In the serum format, which is much more dilute, it smells like vanilla cream pie. The mist is amazing. Cinnamon, notes of cinnamon and fruit and flowers. It's truly amazing. I really love this formulation as an aromatherapy blend. But what's really working the transformational magic here are the flower essences. I'm just going to jump into that today. But before I do that, I wanted to show you something really cool that I found on my run. I was thinking about doing this live today, and I literally almost stumbled on this honeycomb. Isn't that amazing? And it almost looks like a heart. And it almost looks like a heart to me. And I when I see it, you know, I think like community and working together and collaboration. And I believe that right now is the perfect timing for this blend open heart, because it will help all of us come together. It will help us come together and be curious and open and be able to have harder conversations and move through conflict really gracefully and gently. And the way to do that, this is why I think open heart is so important. The way to move through any types of conflict is first by being vulnerable with ourselves. It's really a practice of turning toward ourselves. Anything that we perceive as like a conflict in the outer world. You know, we've all been through an amazing series of events and experiences throughout the last 6 to 7 months. Many people have experienced stress on many different levels for so many different reasons. And the way to dissolve tension, jagged edges, conflict in the outer world is first to turn toward ourselves, towards the parts of ourselves that feel vulnerable or like there's something scary inside of us, and fully sit with and welcome those parts of ourselves. One of the most powerful flowers to help us do that is the Cannonball Flower. It is one of the most beautiful flowers I have ever seen. And Cannonball, it's called that because it grows on a very tall, like 3-story high tree. And when the flower actually turns to fruit, it literally looks like these giant brown cannonballs hanging from the tree. It's the most bizarre and amazing thing I've ever seen. And the magic of this beautiful cannonball flower is that it really helps us be with whatever is arising within ourselves and embrace and welcome all of the parts and pieces of ourselves, even those that are seemingly scary or uncomfortable or tense. We can welcome all those parts of us. And when we're able to be fully vulnerable with ourselves first, then we can be vulnerable with other people. But that first step is really in just turning towards our own self and being vulnerable with ourselves. It also helps in situations when other people are experiencing intense emotions. Let's say somebody comes to you with grief or anger or rage or irritation or crunchy or whatever types of intensity of emotions that they're experiencing, we can be better containers of just holding whatever it is that is arising for that person. Whereas if there's something that we don't want to look at inside of ourselves or that makes us feel uncomfortable and want to run away, when someone around us has an intense emotional experience, we will also want to run away. So this is part of the magic around this Cannonball Flower, is helping us be totally open and vulnerable to everything inside of us, all aspects, all types of emotional intensities within our own system, so that when it arises around us in other people or manifests in our external environment, we are so much more equipped to be with and welcome whatever those situations are. The next flower I'm going to talk about is the clockvine flower. Clockvine you can also find in tropical places. I've seen it growing in Costa Rica. I've seen it growing in Florida. It's originally from India, and it's like a chain. It's this beautiful vine with these yellow and red slipper-like flowers. There's a blog post on our website about clockvine that's written by Taylor, and she talks about how much she hated this flower. She hated photographing it. She hated looking at it. She hated making the labels. That's highly entertaining blog post if you haven't seen it yet. And one of the reasons that she at first disliked it, it's now one of her favorite flowers, is because of its incredible quality to help you see things about yourself or in your life that you've been avoiding. All of us have things that we avoid, or this sense of like being at a crossroads. You know, those times in your life when you come to a crossroads and you're deciding which way to go. Sometimes can be very scary. I know I meet with people in one-on-one consultation sometimes, and when we get to this particular flower arising as something that could be helpful, it's when the client is 500% ready to see the elephant in the room and ready to move through it versus avoid it. Oftentimes we just don't want to face something. We want things to be so smooth, and we want things to be perfect, and we want to know how it's all going to turn out, and that ultimately it's all going to turn out okay. And sometimes we don't know that. Sometimes we just kind of have to bulldoze right through the middle, and it's very messy. And clockvine gives us the courage to just be with whatever that is, to see the elephant in the room and be able to make changes. I find for people who are looking to change relationships, say a relationship isn't working, or a job or a particular pattern just isn't working anymore, clockvine is a really helpful remedy to help us really honestly take a look at what it is so we can see it and then make a change that makes things more beneficial for everyone involved. Okay, the third flower is Lady's Mantle. It's a little hard to see here, but it is a wildly bright colored chartreuse flower that looks like a star. We collected it in Iceland, although it grows in many different parts of the world. And the Lady's Mantle is for engaging your childlike curiosity and sense of wonder. It's for pioneering. It's for breaking out of the box, breaking past the barriers of what you thought was possible. What a helpful remedy for today when things are so stuck in polarization, right? It's like politically, it's about right and left. Everything in the last 6 or 7 months has been this amplification of extremes, black and white, yes or no, right or wrong, this side or that side, and experiencing a lot of division and polarization. One of the ways that I see us getting through this time of polarization is by having more curiosity. Having curiosity about the viewpoints of other people who don't think the way that we think. I know that recently we have tried to interview, I really literally have just sort of dipped my toe into interviewing people on topics that are a little bit more edgy, talking about the medical industry or informed consent. And we have received some emails from folks who say don't agree with something that either popped up in the podcast, or maybe they didn't even listen, but they assume that it might cover something that they don't agree with. And although I'm so open, like literally so open-hearted to feedback, and I find it very valuable, and I love when people write to us, I also see the value of just being curious about people who don't think the way we think, right? People who have other viewpoints than we do. And I think that's the only way that we'll get through this time of polarization, is just being curious. And being curious doesn't mean that we have to adopt anything that the other person says, right? If you're in a relationship with your husband, brother, mother-in-law, sister, coworker, and they have a very different viewpoint than you do, just simply by being curious about why, I wonder why they think the way that they do. Sometimes that is enough to just sort of bridge the gap enough to take the tension and the steam out of whatever is arising. I've heard actually a lot of people say that they have lost friends and family and relationships through all the different types of experiences that have happened this year, because of difference of opinion. And so I know that can be really painful for some people. And I think that curiosity is just such a helpful tool if we can remain open and curious. And also curious what's going to happen. Things could turn out so much better than we could imagine. Okay, the fourth flower, Soraka. This is a beautiful explosion of yellow flowers that come off of a tree that is also a tropical tree. This is a very tropical flowery blend, with the exception of lady's mantle. So the story that I always remember with Soraka is that it is said to be the tree that historically Maya, this woman who was pregnant and she was about to give birth, she eventually gave birth to a historical figure by the name of Sakyamuni, who in Eastern cultures would understand as the Buddha or the Enlightened One. And this tree is what Maya grabbed onto as she was giving birth. Literally, she was walking pregnant, grabbed onto the tree, and gave birth while holding onto this tree. And I always think about that story as being so meaningful, because this flower is so helpful for times of transition and change. And it helps us really sink into the present moment during these times of change. Oftentimes when we are experiencing some kind of conflict or fear of the unknown, we tend to speed up and go faster versus slow down and rest into the present moment. So the Soraka flower helps us slow down into the present moment. This is actually one of the flowers that we recommend for hospice. When you are about to lose a loved one, sometimes you go through this period of panic because you can see the sands of time running out, and you just want to like grasp onto any moment, that you have left with this person or pet or being. And Soraka is really helpful in helping us let go of that panic, because the moment that we panic about not having enough time is the moment that we leave the present moment and we leave the now and go into the fear of missing out on something. So whether it is in experiences of hospice, which is death and dying, or transition, or death and dying of something, right? In our culture, we're experiencing the death and dying transition in many different ways, metaphorically as well. It's also a helpful remedy for birthing, which is interesting because perhaps when women give birth, a part of them is dying and being reborn as well. So Soraka flower helps us really follow the natural rhythms, not letting things get stuck or strained or tense. It helps us let go of control and allows us to sink into a deeper level of patience and slowing down and being aware. It's also a flower that's found near temples, places of prayer, which I think is really beautiful. So those are the 4 main flower essences in the blend called Open Heart. As a whole, when you bring flower essences together, they create another kind of synergistic effect. You can take them singularly, but when you put them all together, it creates this kind of exponential effect. And what I would say is that when you want to reach for open heart is maybe you've worked through infinite love, you've worked through fierce compassion, and you're ready to get to that next layer of vulnerability and surrender and laying down your weapons, laying down your defenses, being fearless about whatever is scary inside or outside. That is the time to reach for open heart. Some of the benefits that you can experience if you work with open heart regularly, you may notice that it's much easier to have hard conversations, that it's easier to make space for yourself, for your own emotions, for others' emotions, and that it feels easier to move through situations that could be viewed as conflicts. There is a practice that I want to share, and I can share it more in depth. It's a little bit wild, and I think because today's a party, really, we probably just want to get to like making the kombucha float, and I can show you how to do that in a second here. But if any of you are experiencing intense emotions or angry or frustrated about how things are going, this is just sharing this very briefly, and I can go more into depth if anybody is interested. Feel free to reach out. But there is a particular practice that you can employ as you're working with open heart, and that is to imagine any of the situations that are difficult in your life that are arising inside of you or outside of you as characters, like characterizations. And the reason why we do that is to invite in a sense of humor. This practice actually was taught to me by one of my Tibetan teachers, Anam Thupten, and he would talk about the parts of ourselves that we don't like inside of ourselves. So the parts of ourselves that are either weird or scary or ugly or somehow just like things about ourselves that we don't like. And he described a character that he really loves from the movies that he would imagine inside of himself. And that is from the movie Lord of the Rings, that Gollum character, right? Gollum is this like strange looking, unpredictable, precious, like super attached to this ring. And he felt like it was such and I do too, it's such a great characterization of any part of us that is attached to something. We might be attached to our favorite coffee cup or our favorite piece of clothing, or a person or a place or an idea or a career or a job or a role or whatever it may be. We can visualize the parts of ourselves that are so attached and grasping and fixated as like this sort of golem-like creature. And when we do that, it invites in this sense of humor. And we can sort of welcome those creatures and characters in. And in the welcoming, it diffuses the energy and brings more the parts of us that are fragmented into integration. I should mention also that in the Open Heart Blend, we also infused it with green turquoise gem elixir. And one of the qualities of that particular turquoise is to help us with integration, to, for that very reason, help bring the fragmented pieces together so that we can operate from a more whole position. So you can try this practice on your own. Literally, it just takes 5 or 10 minutes. If there's something arising in you, you can put a character to it. I can share one of the characters that I imagined in doing this practice was, you know, those days when you put on your jeans and you're like, oh, my jeans are too tight and I gained a little bit of weight, and oh man, and you just like start getting down on your body and you got this extra little flubby layer. So in my practice, I was imagining this like giant creature that's just like jelly rolls and kind of dripping with, you know, just kind of like greasy and disgusting, and like really trying to put a characterization of this feeling that I have when I'm being really self-critical. So then again, welcoming that creature, welcoming that character, welcoming everything about them, and then letting the character dissolve. That is such a great practice, and you can use that for any situation that pushes your buttons, that makes you feel tense or uncomfortable or under attack or fragmented or avoidant. You can use that practice. If you're interested in knowing more about the practice or me going more into depth about it, I can do that on social media as well later. But I think we want to have a little bit of fun today and make things light and easy. The nice thing about flower essences is that they really open the door, and ultimately we have to walk through the door and do the work, but they make things so much more effortless. And I can say from personal experience of working with Open Heart very, very regularly for the last couple of months, observing the effects of it on my own mind and heart and in my personal relationships and business relationships. I can tell you that it works very fast. It's very quick to reflect back to you situations in your life. It can enhance intimacy in relationships, and that can be like love, romantic relationships. That can be friends, sisters, parents. It really helps us connect and get closer. It inspires this feeling inside of you of really wanting to pull people in closer. It's like as you turn towards yourself and all of those crazy parts, you're also like loving yourself so much more. It's like pulling yourself in closer. And so you may feel this really divine sense of reflecting on all the people that you love and care about in your life, and really wanting to pull them closer, and really wanting to feel okay being more yourself, like more free, more exposed. So a funny story from this morning, as I was getting ready for the day. So my bedroom in my house is at the end of this long hallway, and if I'm changing clothes or whatever, I'm like literally at the end of this hallway so everyone can see me. So I thought, maybe I should get one of those really beautiful Japanese Norin curtains and hang it in the doorway. And then that way there's at least some privacy when I'm changing and whatnot. So I ordered one, and this morning I put it up. It's very beautiful. Just creates this beautiful cloth divider. And then I went out for a run. I found this beautiful creation by the bees. And then I brought it back home, and I went to do my outdoor shower because it's still quite warm here in Arizona. And I've just been loving the outdoor showers. And I get out there, and the rod that holds the shower curtain just like fell. And it was like, wouldn't stay up. So this whole strange, bizarre story to tell you that sometimes if we look at the little signs in our life, they're telling us that it's okay to be exposed. That part of the magic of these flower essences is to help us be more free, being fully ourselves. Maybe not necessarily being naked in front of the whole room, but to have that feeling of being more open and being able to expose the different sides of ourselves, the soft parts, the fierce parts, and really have those conversations that are a little bit difficult for us. That when we start to exercise those muscles, we will become very strong in that sense. And relationships will develop more intimacy, more closeness, more connection, more juiciness, more compassion, more understanding. And ultimately, it's about liberation. This third level of flower essences that we've been developing, so the 3.0 versions of everything, is really about freedom. And so, although it does require a little bit of awareness and working with whatever arises, what I can tell you is that on the other side, there's freedom. And there is freedom in experiencing more closeness with people around you and more acceptance of yourself. Okay, so now I'm just gonna talk about some fun stuff. We did a promotion this week that if you ordered an elixir, we would send you these cool vinyl stickers. I don't know if you're like me. When I was a kid, I used to play with these things all the time. They had little characters and you could take on their clothes and put on different outfits in these vinyl stickers. So we made a huge one of the Cannonball Flower. Such a beautiful, exquisite flower. And you can just pop this on any glass surface, kind of like a moto, right? Where you put the sticker on the outside and it starts to affect the liquid inside. So even if you just put water in here, the flower can start to help structure the water. And then I'm going to send out the recipe for anybody who orders Open Heart. We'll send out the recipe of actually a couple different drinks, but I wanted to share this one with you because it's so much fun and it's so easy. I took the flavor or like the scent profiles of Open Heart and sort of put them into taste profiles. And here's what we came up with. Coconut Bliss ice cream, especially if you're on the no dairy train. This is the sweet cherry amaretto flavor. Because something about Open Heart, especially when you use it in the anointing oil, it smells like cherries. So this is Happy Friday, how to do a kombucha float. And you just put as much ice cream as you like in the glass. And then roseberry kombucha. I have to give Taylor credit for this idea. I've never heard of doing kombucha floats before a few weeks ago. And they're just the most incredible treat. Oh my goodness. So take a little bit of roseberry kombucha and you just pour that over the top of your coconut bliss ice cream. Also really good with any type of chocolate. We chose cherry amaretto because that's really in alignment with how Open Heart smells, but it's really good with any kind of chocolate as well. So this is the kombucha float. It is divine. Then you just add some drops of Open Heart elixir on top. If you want to get fancy with garnish, you can take a slice of lemon and put that on top. That's it, folks. And this is so fun and so divine. If you have friends over or you want to just do a little celebration with yourself. Wow. It is so good. So good. Healthy treat. It's a little bit sweet, but no dairy. Sweetened with agave syrup. It's wonderful as a really nice little sweet treat. It's a nice way to celebrate with Open Heart. And I'll just wrap up by saying thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being interested in the world of flowers and flower essences. They are so powerful and so supportive and sometimes subtle and always gentle and yet so transformative. And I believe that if more of us are working with flower essences regularly, it is creating this incredible ripple effect on people that we see in the store, on our family members, on our pets. And it is making a huge difference. And I can say from experience, just working with this particular blend, it very much changes relationships. You can see the effects of it immediately in your relationships with other people. So here's to your exploration, your discovery of yourself, the welcoming and accepting and loving and open-heartedness to all of those parts and pieces of yourself, the wild ones, the scary ones, the uncomfortable ones. Here's to welcoming all of those characters in and being able to be more adept and graceful at welcoming conflict into our life, into our surroundings. And may we all be able to access the deepest parts of ourselves to move through what is arising in ourselves, in our culture, in this time in history, that this experience may blast our hearts open, and may we ultimately come together closer, more intimate, more wildly connected than ever. That's my prayer. Cheers. I dedicate this YouTube live stream to you, that you may dive into your heart and find greater ease and connection and integration and wholeness. Thank you so much for being here.